remember to buy a copy of your favorite books from the Cheeky Merchants. If we don't have it, we'll source it for you, but we'll definitely find the book for you.
Hello, Cheeky Natives. Welcome to another episode of the Cheeky Natives. I feel like this year, Nhlongo and I are just on an absolute roll. We're just bringing absolute heat on every level. So no pressure to our guest for today, but just know that we've promised to give our Cheeky Natives a preview of the best. Nhlongo, how are you?
Girl, listen, I'm always good talking to you and talking about our favorite thing in the world, books. And I'm actually quite excited because I know you and I basically ambushed this author at the Ilembe Book Festival. And we're like, why do we not have your books? So I'm really excited that we finished the book and we get to talk to the author about what I think is a really important book in thinking about historical fiction, but also the purpose of imagination in a context of historical fiction. So I will give you the absolute honor to introduce our guest today because I kira wena o tshwere dilo, my dear, wena o tla ka dilo.
Hey, I can tell facts. So I have the extreme honor of introducing today's guest, Dr. Nokuthula Mazibuko Msimang, who is an academic, a filmmaker, a broadcaster, and author of 6 books for younger readers. As a previous winner for the Best Ahead Writing Fellowship, Mazibuko Msimang is also a Pen During Awards finalist for her latest children's books. Hawe Mukhadi Kasta Sminya. She's a fellow at the University of Pretoria's Future Africa Research Institute, and Daughters of Nandi is Mazibuko Msimang's debut work of adult fiction. She is the guest for this episode of the Cheeky Natives as we discuss the Daughters of Nandi. So welcome, Dr. Mazibuko Msimang.
Cheeky Natives. Oh, I couldn't keep calm all week. I've been jumping up and down.
That's what we want to hear. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear
I love you guys, and congratulations on such a fabulous podcast. And I was elated to meet you both at the fabulous Ilembe Book Festival. Wasn't it amazing?
It was absolutely amazing. I thought also it's quite interesting, right? Because your kind of forte or your entrance into the literary spaces in the children book realm, right? How was the shift kind of moving from writing for little people to adult people?
I have to say, I started writing, when was this? About 2 decades ago. My first novella for teenagers, In the Fast Lane, about a young girl coming of age in Soweto, came out in 2003. And at that stage, I just was not very optimistic about the adult population. My feeling was, oh gosh, we've really not done very well. So we should just live our lives out just slowly and progress towards meeting our maker. But then I realized 20 years later that my young readers are grown. So I need to venture and give them something to read. Abo Amangwe, who I was writing for back then, they are now adults. Let's venture and let's see. And I had been sitting with the Queen Nandi story for a very long time. And it was just that voice that was wanting for me to engage and sit down and imagine if I could sit down, Unandi, if I were to sit down with her, what would our conversation be? And is it true that she cursed her descendants because she was so angry? She was blinded by her, I think, intense love for Zulu people. How could they do this to her? She birthed Ushaka. She is the mother of the Zulu nation. And how dare they not give her position, her proper place as Indlovukazi, as the one who birthed the first son? And that's how the Daughters of Nandi began.
It's interesting that you write about Nandi, and she is so central in many ways to a book about women in the future, right? But the curse as retribution, I feel that it affects her female descendants in a very pointed way, right? When it's often, in this case, the mistreatments and the maltreatments is from her male partner and that part of the relationship. So it's interesting that Nandi has this curse, Queen Nandi has this curse. as retribution, but it really affects her female descendants in very pointed ways. And I'm curious about the commentary around making that choice.
Yeah, I've had so many people just take issue with me around that. I remember I did a reading in Soweto, and a young man, first of all, took issue with the fact that how can a mother curse her children? How can I write such a story? How is that possible? So that was the one thing. And then the other, of course, is this curse affects primarily her female descendants. And her reasoning, rightly, so the issue that you were raising is around her female descendants. And rightly or wrongly, she then says, Uguti, you know what? I am somebody's daughter. So if you are going to treat somebody's daughter like this, then I unleash torrents of rain and all of this. She said her descendants, but it does affect her female descendants more. Her thing was, look, this will rain upon your descendants and your daughters, in as much as they're my daughters, but they are your daughters as well. And I hope that you will feel the pain that my people have felt. But the point is, anger and love can be blind. And really, I think I wanted to just, it's a little bit of a cautionary tale to say, when you are so blinded by love, when you are so blinded by anger, where do you go from there? And I was trying to not be judgmental about it, because we've all been in that space where you are just raging, right? You are raging. You want to burn everything. And whatever happens, you just don't care. I've certainly been in that space. But I don't think it's a very useful or helpful space to be in. I think it's understandable. I think it's justified. And I don't really have an answer. Some people will say, look, sometimes you need to clear the path. Your rage, your anger will clear the path. And I don't know. I don't have the answer. I mean, we in South Africa come out of a situation where we engaged in armed struggle and in defense of people and fighting for freedom. So when is violence justified? Does violence beget more violence? And then when do you stop? I don't have the answers.
I think it's quite interesting that it's called The Daughters of Nandi. So we already know it's about these women in the future. And as Alma said earlier, Queen Nandi is quite central to the story, right? Why is she so central to the story about women who essentially are in the future?
She is Queen Nandi. She is their mother. She birthed them. Her DNA, her life, her being affects. But I also wanted to honor Queen Nandi on one level. And I was also fascinated by the love story between Queen Nandi and Senzangakhona. They lived 200 years ago. There was no media then. But here is this woman who gave birth to one of the really greatest military strategists of recent history. And we know of her. We don't really know that much about her life, but we know about the figure of Queen Nandi. We know that she is the mother of King Shaka. So I did want to celebrate her. I wanted to celebrate her love. And I wanted to really explore just historically where women are positioned, that the more things change, in a sense, they do stay the same, because some of the issues that she had, if you look at a character like Amangwe, who is a fallist, but her relationship with Utkapela is a bit tricky. He feels a sense of ownership over her body and her movements, and how they relate needs to really be figured out. So I really wanted that sense of connection to Indlovukazi, and the fact that your history does birth you. It can give you grounding, but it can also take you off the rails. And if it has taken you off the rails, how then do you go back and realign? And then there is the whole matter, of course, of culturally, what do you do? Because Queen Nandi keeps appearing in dreams. She keeps appearing and saying they need to cleanse her womb because she was disrespected, right? And this is a recurring theme in the book, that they need to do right by her and cleanse her womb. So they are connected to their ancestor. And how they cleanse the bloodline, in a sense, will affect the present.
We're taking a short break. We're taking a short break.
Interested in that, and I find that interesting. I actually wanted us to speak a little bit about historical fiction as being a challenging genre to write about, right? So if you can walk us through just the research process, because I think around the editorial decisions that you make regarding poetic license, but also the ways in which being able to make those decisions allows you to imagine a different life for the daughters of Nandi.
Yes, look, there are two kinds of historical fiction, right? There is historical fiction, I think, like The Daughters of Nandi, that to some extent rewrites history in order to affect the present, right? So The Daughters of Nandi go back to a wrong that was done to their mother, uNdlovukazi, and they try and right that wrong. They cleanse her womb, bamgeza isibeletho, so that the present can realign, right? And then there's historical fiction that sticks pretty close to the events of history and does not seek to change or reimagine the present through the lens of the past, right? Yeah, so with The Daughters of Nandi, I wanted to rewrite even Izibongo, the clan names of Queen Nandi. So you will see later in the book, we actually rewrite the clan names because the original ones, or the ones as they stand, she is called quite a wild woman. She's called a wayward woman. You know, she is responsible for what happened to her because she was uncontrollable. Her Izibongo are not very kind to Queen Nandi. So with me rewriting Izibongo Zakanandi, I wanted to say, look, she may have her challenges, she may have her strengths, she may have her weaknesses, but the lens of history needs to be kinder to her because, frankly, I think if she were male, history would be kinder to her. I think you would be hard-pressed to find clan names of a male leader of the stature of Queen Nandi that really just focus on the faults or the weaknesses. So I really wanted to rewrite. And just in terms of the history, I read a lot of the books. There is a book by Usha Lombata, beautiful, beautiful biography of the Zulu people called uZulu. It's written in isiZulu, but also translated into English. The foreword is by King Zwelithini, where she really writes about the history and about the characters who really made the Zulu nation. That book was incredible. But also we've seen the film of King Shaka, the first one, not Shaka Ilembe, the most recent one, where Dudumkize was Queen Nandi. And of course, the most recent one, where Unomzamo Mbatha, she was a fabulous Queen Nandi, and I think she's closer to the Queen Nandi that I wrote. Of course, I read a lot and I watched the films, but at some point, I really just had to stop and say, I don't know a lot about Queen Nandi's lived experiences. It's 200 years ago, and she did not keep a diary. But also, I'm not writing a history textbook, right? So how can I, in part, write some of the facts that we know about her from oral narratives, but reimagine, and of course, in a dramatic way, seek to reverse this curse? And that is how Kia, Uju, and Amangwe were born. Kia, of course, in the 1800s, Uju in the 1950s in Sophiatown, and Amangwe grows up in the 2000s, and she goes to university at West University, and of course gets caught up in that whole struggle. I have to point out, my publisher, Zukiswa Vana, was absolutely amazing. She organized something so incredible for me. Maza Mangeste, who wrote the book shortlisted Shadow King, ran a writing workshop on historical fiction. And Maza said something that stuck with me. And she said, you know what, just put down your research and write. Just don't censor yourself, because first drafts are necessarily ugly. So don't censor yourself. Don't be scared to move away from the fiction, move away from the history, move away from it and go as wild as you want. You'll go back, you'll do draft 1, draft 2, draft 205. And that really freed me to say, look, there was a real life character, Unandi Kabebe Ilanga Laselangeni, who married King Senzangakhona, and they had a son called King Shaka. And we know that there was an issue around her lobola. In fact, we know that as recently as the mid-1980s, King Zwelithini sought to right this wrong that was done. It is in Shalombata's book. The king wanted to bring the spirit of Queen Nandi back into the fold and do all the marital rites, and all of that. So he to do it. So there are all those facts, but then there is the fiction.
Yeah. Now I feel like I'm in a lecture hall and I'm loving it.
I hope the cheeky natives are just appreciating how you are being schooled in your history, right? From such a
Listen, even now,
powerful feminist lens, ne? Please, I hope all the
yeah,
hoteps are listening.
even now I'm like, yo, guys, why can't I be isiZulu speaking so that I can also be
Could be you, but
This
you
could
don't
be
want to
me.
speak isiZulu to me.
Dr. Mazibuko. And we just say that because I particularly love honoring people with their titles because I think it's completely, profoundly beautiful to do that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to ask, the book has three protagonists, which you've mentioned, right? These three women who'd existed in different periods of time. And there you make this editorial decision to write them in third person, right? So we are witnesses, voyeurs to their stories. But when you write Queen Nandi, you write her in first person. And we wanted to find out, why was that important for you? The book is about daughters of Nandi, so we're anticipating we're going to find more about these daughters. And we do because we are onlookers onto their lives and onto their stories. But when Queen Nandi appears or when Queen Nandi speaks, she's in first person. Why was that important?
Wow. Sure. Queen Nandi in the first person. And I'm only just realizing it now that I think I knew it instinctively, but I'm realizing it just in the clarity, just what does Oprah call an aha moment? I just had an aha moment. I feel as though I needed to give Queen Nandi the right of reply because in a lot of ways, history had silenced her. History had silenced her. And I do get a lot of feedback from people who talk about the book on platforms. A friend of mine, actually, who is a visual artist, I call him King Makhato, Chipape Makhato. He's the curator of the William Humphreys Gallery in the Northern Cape. And he was talking, because his work is around yeah, especially the Makhato Royal House. So he was talking about the daughters of Nandi, and somebody in the audience just piped up, unprovoked, on a bright, sunny day, piped up, Nandi was not a queen. Why do you call her a queen? She was not a queen because there were issues. The son was illegitimate and all of these things. She was not a queen. And Kato said, no, she was. Yes, there were issues, but she famously went to the House of Zulu and demanded to be lobolad. The name says usually you would go with elders, but apparently she was sent with young boys to go and state her case. And so I really felt that I wanted to speak. I want her to speak because so much is said about her. Is she a queen? Wasn't she a queen? Oh, she was so loud. She was so wild. All of these things about her. So I really, as I was writing, I felt that she needs to speak.
Listen, wait again, the chicken because authors are having aha moments about their books. So I'm just like, yeah, that's what we want to hear. And I think it's really important for you to say that, like you talk about this idea of right of reply, right? But you also, I think it's doing beautiful feminist work because not only is it a right of reply, but in Daughters of Nandi, it's a moment where Queen Nandi gets to live to be herself, right? And so you honor her, even in the way that you say you rewrite the clan names, right? This rewriting of history, this story that's deeply profound. And I just wanted to say that I just think that in many ways, it's a feminist choice that you made and such a powerful feminist choice because you were taking history back into her mouth, right? And allowing her to speak for herself on her own terms, even though there may be people who think she's illegitimate. That didn't matter for you because she birthed the king of the Zulu nation. So she is a queen.
She is absolutely a queen. And often people who make history are inconvenient. And because they are making history with a capital H, their inconveniences are magnified. I think all of us are tricky, right? Human beings are tricky. But the big characters of the world, their issues are, of course, they as legendary as they are. So that is why even at the Ilembe Book Festival, I think it was Zuki Vanna who asked, I think, a similar question to the cheeky natives, that why this focus on the daughters? And of course, I know as a mother myself and as a daughter as well, that the mothers will pull us closer to themselves and be harder on us. You know, so you are like your mom's age mate. So you will sort each other out on a level. So there were a lot of issues which are inconvenient, a lot of issues which are really very complicated. I was not interested in writing a perfect queen or perfect characters. Even Uju. Uju is, oh my word, she is really impatient. We can understand how many children does she have. I've forgotten now. I think she has how many? 6, or she has a lot of children. 7 or Uju has a lot of children. Uju and Mahamba.
She has kids on kids.
She has kids on kids. So it's understandable. You can be very impatient. But she is a piece of work. In fact, in the original, I think the second draft or so, she actually beat up Mahamba, and my editors said, Mahamba. No, in fact, she does beat him up in the book. She beats him up once, but in the other tuning, she would just occasionally slap him. I was advised to then just bring her in, but I was not interested in perfect, characters, because these are big women, right? They are creating worlds, they are moving worlds. So a lot of the time, they are not convenient. Your Winnie Mandelas of the world are not convenient. Winnie was larger than life. But I also know that Winnie, there is a lot of really soft, amazing things that she did that are not in the newspapers. They're not in public memory. Mam Winnie sponsored the home that my mother runs, and every Sunday she would bring the kids food and whatever. It's not in the papers, right? But these are huge women who have an impact on history. Queen Nandi is such a woman.
I love that. And I think it's actually such a good way for us to think around the questions I have about romance and love in this book, Dr. Mazibuko Msimang. Each of these women experience irrefutable heartbreak at every single generation. The men just to show, yes, they show off and they show out, as young people would say. Why this particular literary choice? I'm interested in the questions around what the book is saying about romance and love in the lives of these women. 2 out of 3 of the protagonists outside of Queen Nandi experience just the trashiest, the worst of what men really have to offer. And it's sad because these women have been subjected to a curse from their female ancestor, now compounded by this heartbreak and romance, right? And lack of in their lives. And so I'm curious around the decision for these women to experience this.
Their love lives are complicated. Yeah, they are really complicated. But also it's a recurring decimal, because Naye Undlovukazi, Queen Nandi's love life was complicated. She was rejected time and again. She was a wanderer. She left the Zulu house. She went back to Elangeni. She left Elangeni. Wayawa went back to the Zulu royal house. She was a wanderer. So it's a recurring decimal, yes, because of the curse. Because of that energy that she unleashed, but also because, look, our love lives are also a reflection of what's happening in society. So they will be affected by capitalism, they will be affected by patriarchy, they will be affected by racism. Kia and Uju were living in particularly tricky times. With Kia, her wedding to Uzenzo is interrupted by the war. The Zulu and the British are at war with each other. And again, that question of love and war, the question of violence and peace, that the choices that we make publicly will affect our intimate lives, right? Uju and Mahamba in this whirlwind that is South Africa in the 50s, in Sophiatown, the apartheid laws, and of course, just being unique and really one in a billion, really deals with apartheid in her way, begins to heal the nation. She is a healer in Sophiatown, but the outside really encroaches and affects their intimate spaces in very dramatic and tragic ways for Kia and Uju. I think Amangwe is living now, and I will leave it up to readers to make of Amangwe what they will. In my view, I think she is the most liberated, but maybe it's an archaic view. I know young people will take issue with that and say, we are not born free. But I felt as a daughter of Nandi that she had certain freedoms. She went and protested and so on and took on the system in a way that maybe Kia could not have. And maybe some of the women in the 50s did, but would not have taken it to the extent that Amangwe does. So I think what happens in the world affects our love lives. Who we choose to love, how we choose to love is affected by the systems that we exist in. So we have to then, as people, have that worldview. What kind of world do you want to create? What kind of world do we want our daughters to exist in? Do we want the kind of a world that is going to tell her that, look, you need to shrink because you were born a woman or a man, or you choose to describe yourself another way? But I feel that Amangwe is the most empowered, I have to say, of the three. But I have been challenged on that score.
No, hey, we'll talk about Amangwe in a little bit. I don't know that Amangwe has arrived at this feminist utopian way of thinking yet. So I don't know. We'll get some
I've been
moments.
shut down. I've been shut down.
I think that is the idealism in you as a daughter of Nandi, wanting to think that the world is profoundly better for younger women, and even in ways that shape their thinking. So stay tuned.
I'm so inspired by younger women. Even that moment of Mama Winnie did not die, she multiplied. That was 100% Amangwe, an Amangwe moment. And I was taken aback because we were also, the breath went out of our bodies, But when young women came up and said, Mama Winnie didn't die, she multiplied. Oh my word. So I don't know. The Cheeky Natives disagree with me, but when I look at the work that the Cheeky Natives are doing, I think that there is a level of just getting on with things, with the tools at hand, and really describing, creating, and owning your world in a way that my generation did not. That's my feeling. That's how I feel about it.
I think that women have always rebelled, right? So I think there's a particular temptation for younger women to feel that you're almost at the forefront of rebellion, but that's because you stand on the work of the women who come before you, who were able to make certain decisions possible. So you think of her and maybe that's what younger women are rebelling against, or what younger feminists are rebelling against, right? So this idea that there's almost an erasure in the way that we admire the work of younger activists and younger feminists, that almost seeks to say, you come here, you're trailblazing, but you're able to trailblaze because of the work of people like Uju. Absolutely goes against every single almost limitation that you can think of in the most brave ways. So she is able in many ways to set the agenda for her house. She is the primary breadwinner for her house. She is very feminist in her approach. Right? Yeah, time period. She's feminist in her approach to how she raises her children. She stands in ways that even her husband, who's meant to be the patriarch, is unable to. So that feminist work precedes Amangwe. So I guess that's maybe the discussion is, there's almost a tendency to, in our excitement around what we think younger activists and younger feminists are doing, there's almost an erasure and not an acknowledgement of the preceding work that comes, but the fact that because of the preceding work, you're able to be bolder and braver in ways that the women who come before you were not because they weren't bold and brave, but because the work had not yet been done.
Yeah, and I also think added to that is also the idea of the evolution of language, right? You think about Uju and Uju's time, right? We may not necessarily have had kind of the fullest lingo franco, for instance. But Uju, in the very essence, was feminist in a way that allowed Amangwe to become the woman that she is. And I think because of particular moments in history, we may think of Amangwe as a little bit more liberated. Uju did a lot of kind of going against the colonial grain, going against patriarchy, just in essence holding on to traditions, right? Really being a freedom fighter as a woman who's actually, you know what, like why town, those type of things, like post removal, in a way that I think we can't forget. It is important. We may not have had the language in the 50s to call her a feminist icon, but now we do have the language, and we're looking back and we're saying this daughter of Nandi was in fact like a stepping stone for Amangwe to be the woman that she is.
Yeah. You know, that is, And you must remember that Uju is in the 50s, right? So it is the time of the Defiance campaign, the Women's March, and so on. And interestingly, she is holding a very powerful position, I think, as you've rightly identified, on the margins. And I think she owns that space on the margins to say, look, I am part of society and the Sophiatown removals, and we will march and go to Freedom Square and so on. But she is on the margins saying, I am a healer as well. So I cannot get sucked into the community wholeheartedly and doing that very necessary work of healing the nation, because you can't wait for freedom to come, for people to continue living, for people to reconstitute their lives. And there are a lot of people who did that kind of work. During Apartheid, there were a lot of your nurses, your doctors, your social work, your teachers even your business people. Business people, some of course are larger than life, like Buntate Richard Maponya, but others, even ordinary, just, women who were running spaza shops or ship-ins or whatever. That kept families down, it kept societies together, and we were then able to live in that crazy space where you don't know what's going to happen to you the next moment. So it was also through women like Uju paying homage to those women who are not necessarily recognized in history with a capital H, but certainly perhaps with a lowercase h, but who were vital in holding all of us down in terms of the day-to-day of everyday living. All of those people who made sure that children go to school, who made sure that children are taught, that clinics are sorted out. So there was also that thinking in thinking of the daughters of Nandi, because their mother was huge. She was huge because she was the daughter of a king. So she had her father, Khosi Moagi and Khosi Kgadi Moagi, to protect her and to pave the way for Kia. But I hear what you're saying, that look, women like Uju then did that work of removing the thorns and creating a path where there was none.
So now that we're speaking about these women, I think something that stood out for me is how the body remembers. We think a lot, or we're having profound conversations now around generational trauma and the concepts of cellular memory, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the question around this book particularly is, does the body keep score for these women? Are some of the cycles that we're seeing, or some of the experiences that we're seeing, an example of the ways in which the body keeps score? And if it does, why did you think that was important to include in a text about the experiences of women 3 generations apart?
Gosh, I think you recently did a podcast with Angela McCall, right? And she was asking the question why our society is so violent, why violence is so prevalent, all levels of society, in the public spaces, in the personal spaces. And what do you do with that trauma? What do you do with the body remembering? What do you do with it? And I think those are the questions that myself, as well as other feminists, ask about the body remembering. What do we do with that? And I think that is a question that we, as South Africans, yes, but I also think as humanity, that is the question that we as humanity need to pose to ourselves, that look, there are all of these conflicts raging all around the world. It's going to take another 200 years to clear up. Because our bodies are going to remember. Our bodies will remember COVID, our bodies will remember Russia and Ukraine, our bodies will remember Palestine, our bodies remember apartheid, our bodies remember colonialism, our bodies remember.
Yeah, our bodies do truly remember. We've spoken a little bit about the curse and obviously just what happened in that regard. But wondering to ask you if we can imagine the curse as a way of self-justice, right? So Queen Nandi felt that she was done wrong, and as a way of vindicating herself, she puts this curse. How do we think of things that may be bad for our descendants, but in many ways act as justice for ourselves? Is there a way of thinking about self-justice in this instance?
Oh my goodness. Oh, cheeky natives, you're asking me these questions I don't have answers to. And I think, yes, I write to entertain myself and hopefully to entertain the reader, but I'm also trying to figure out things, right? I'm trying to figure out things because I have been in situations where it's been very cathartic to just let it out of my body, not keep the trauma in my body, let it out and let it land where it lands. And then we'll sort out later what happens. But if you look at where we are now, in terms of the wars that we are coming out of, and a lot of the justified defense, justified just preserving yourself, right? Because people didn't just pick up arms, right? People marched, people spoke, there were petitions, and then eventually they said, look, we are being killed, let's pick up arms. But then what do you do? What do you do after that? What do you do in order to not become the person that you were fighting? What do you do? I know that a lot of people who were fighting in the wars, they've had to cleanse and remove that bloodlust. You have to remove that. You have to remove the curse, because being involved in violence, whether it's justified or not, does bring about chaos and a dark cloud. So how do you cleanse? How do you cleanse your spirit? How do you cleanse your body? How do you get that trauma of defending yourself? How do you get the trauma of attacking? How do you get the trauma out of your body? How do you get the trauma out of your memory? How do you get the trauma out of your spirit?
And I wanted us to speak about restorative justice and thinking about how people who don't have institutional power get justice. But I think it would actually be a good segue for us to talk a little bit about some of the characters. So I'm thinking particularly about Sukiya, right? Sukiya experiences love at first sight, which is probably one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite parts in the book, right? Because
It's
goodness,
lovely.
the women in this book go through the most, right? And I wanted to know what your commentary is about love and hardship, right? Love in the face of hardship. And it's interesting because Gia's story is first after we experience Queen Nandi. Her story is the first one. And there's something interesting about the choice to place Gia first and have Gia experience this beautiful love in the face of hardship, but also in the face of the preceding heartbreak that we've seen.
Look, love is beautiful. Love is beautiful. Love is powerful. Love can conquer all. And maybe I'm like the eternal optimist in that regard. You have to try and try again. So Kia is very lucky. Kia is very lucky. There is an African saying that children arrive on earth with their fists clenched because they are bearing their gifts in those clenched fists. So I think one of Tia's gifts is romantic love. And maybe the other gift is diamonds and gold, because her parents trade in precious metals, right? So she is enchanted. She is golden. And there are people who experience life and love like that. There are people like that. Love is powerful. But even when it's not perfect, I think it's powerful and beautiful in its imperfection. I think Mahamba wants, his mission is to tame the wild Uju. That's what he wants to do. In this life, he wants to be the one. People said, hey, lapha kwaMhlongo akulotsholwa, don't go there. Those women, those Mhlongo women are unlobola rebel. don't go there, Mahamba. And Mahamba, what did he do? He was like, hey, mina Mahamba. Me, I am Mahamba. There is that love. And there is that somewhat nervous Capella who is just freaked by the power of Amangwe. And that is love. It's love. They are in love. They break up. They want to sort it out. It's love. What can I say?
Mahamba's trash. That's what I want the records to straight. Mahamba is
Umahamba
trash.
yedwa. Umahamba yedwa.
I wish Behambe yedwa and left Uju alone because he's trash. He is trashy. And Kapela is also trashy, but there's levels to this trashiness. And I'm still working out where everyone on the scale falls. But those two, trash.
I wanted to speak a bit about Uju, right? Who is the historical kind of reference to Uju? Because I'm interested about the kind of non-fiction work that you've been working on and thinking about whether there's a foreshadowing going on there.
I know.
Uju is my fave. Uju is my fave. I see all of them. I think Uju is the most subversive, the bravest, the most groundbreaking of the women in this book.
I've got to tell you, Uju gave me so much trouble writing. I must have rewritten Uju a billion times
because she was. I found of Mahamba.
Oh, is it because Mahamba was blocking me?
Mahamba was just blocking you in the way that trashy men do, blocking your blessings.
I know Mahamba was trying to make a living, busy with those goods trains and everything. He was trying to make things happen. So I don't know. I don't want to, with his shiny flush-up shoes. I don't know. I don't know about Mahamba. I don't know. But the 50s, who is Uju play? Look, I don't know. I've just finished a biography, Doli Ratebe, which is launching in April, right? So Mam Doli famously dated Butin Gately. This is also another aha moment. So she famously dated Sophiatown gangster, Butin Gately, and had a son with Butin Gately. And there is Uju with her gangster. So I don't know. I don't think I did it consciously, but of course I've been a student of history and I'm a student of Sophiatown. In my master's degree, I looked at popular theater through the ages. So I looked at King Kong, which was created in the 50s and based on that time. I looked at Sarafina and how women were portrayed. I looked at the play Sophiatown, which was created in the 80s by Junction Avenue Theatre, but of course was referencing what happened in Sophiatown. So I don't know, Uju, yes, I didn't do it consciously, but I think I do have an admiration of especially what I call the mega divas of Sophiatown. Your Miriam Makebas, your Doli Ratebes, your Sophie Mcinas, your Abigail Kupegas. I've written a paper called The Mega Divas of Sophiatown. I presented it at UJ, and it's part of the Doli Ratebe biography. So is she a mega diva of Sophiatown?
Yes. Without
a doubt. Like
she's huge. She's huge. But of course, she sings the songs of Abangoma. When Sophiatown is being raised, she is trying to hold on to Sophiatown with everything in her soul. I think she is a mega diva of Sophiatown.
I know Amangwe is your fave, but you may not want to.
Exactly, that's my baby. That's my baby.
Mazibuko Msimang, but she's your fave. But you know what I find interesting about Amangwe? There is a thread around mother-daughter relationships in this book. They're difficult. They are challenging. We see the women in this book really wrestle with motherhood, but wrestle with their daughters. And Amangwe is almost at the climax of all of this wrestling that we see, right? We see difficult relationships between mothers and daughters in this book. And I'm curious about why you wrote women and their daughters in the way that you did in this book. It starts off with Queen Nandi cursing her children, and we see her daughters being particularly affected by this curse. And then you see an Amangwe who has quite a challenging relationship with an imperfect mother.
She has an imperfect mother, and in her eyes, she has a perfect grandmother. Mhlongo can do no wrong in Amangwe's eyes. Of course, her mother goes off, she's working in the factory, but she's a nighttime girl. So Amangwe initially is made in the image of her grandmother, of Mhlongo. Mhlongo, we don't know really her history. She just pitches in the way one day, she just rocks up and pitches her shack and lives there. We don't, the backstory only comes later of what happened. So she arrives. She is this woman who arrives, who has this daughter, and then the daughter has Amangwe. It is perfection. The mothers love their daughters. The mothers love their daughters. The daughters love the mothers. But it is in that frame also of patriarchy, where Amangwe, they demand that she has to be a certain way. She must not join the Follists. She must not go on that march because ladies don't do such things. So Mhlongo is not going to have it because she raised Amangwe in the church. So this thing of hers, instead of getting her education, why is she marching up and down? Why is she doing all these things when she was raised so well? So it's also when you love somebody, you want the best for them, but you're not doing it in the best way for them. You are putting pressure. You are really not being a good mother. But in your view, you are being a good mother. So that's how relationships are. Unfortunately, they don't give you a chance and say, can you try it out first or do it in an app or something like that. You are just given this daughter and then you have to make it work.
You get given a stranger. I saw someone post that. You get given a naked stranger, especially.
Yes.
And you must take them home and keep them alive.
You have to keep them alive.
And thriving.
Dr. Mazibuko, this is an unfair question, but is it because you like Amangwe that she was the one who had to break the curse?
Questions that need answers.
Before this interview, I said to myself, if you ask me that question, I'm going to say I love all the characters. I don't know how we arrived at this point, but I had this. That's one thing I had rehearsed. I rehearsed that I had all their good points, and I was going to say, because I have been asked this before, and I flat out refused. So I'm not sure why this mollycoddling of Amangwe. But anyway, now that I have been discovered, I think there is a part of me that believes that, and maybe I'm being naive. I don't know if I'm being naive, time will tell. But I do believe that God makes better versions as time moves on. I do believe that. I think my children are better than me and my husband. They really surprise me. And that's my bias and my belief. Whether it's whatever it is, they say a mother does not see ugliness in their child. A mother does not see faults in their child. And a grandmother is even worse. So I think I'm also writing from that point of view of a mother where my child can do no wrong.
Fair enough, and the points about grandparents is interesting. I'm watching my mother as a grandmother, and some days I don't recognize who this person is. I'm shook every day. I'm like, who are you and what did you do to my mother? But there's a way in which you write about women, right? And you write about powerful Black women that I think is such an important feminist editorial choice, right? In a book about a woman's choice because the deciding to curse her children is also a choice, right? And I want us to talk a little bit about why you felt that you needed to write about powerful Black women, but not in a way that martyrs them, right? You've written about them in the full sense of their humanity. And that is something that's also very important.
Well, I've lived with those women, so I know them, that they can open a path for you and close it at the same time. So that both the light and the shade can exist within the same person. But I wanted to thank them because Queen Nandi could not really be as soft as maybe the kind of woman that Amangwe might be able to be, because she was building a kingdom. So there were also all of those questions of how do you mother and how do you become? How are you in your historical context? The same with you. There was a lot going on. So when there's a lot going on, how do you mother? But also, people have pointed out that my version of Queen Nandi also has shown a lot of her soft side, a lot of her flirtatious side as well, which I think I do appreciate, because I think that they are not two-dimensional. They are not strong all the time or angry all the time. There are times when they take their children away and sing to them so they don't hear the gunfire outside. There are times where they are wanting to distract the children. They're not fighting all the time, but they want the children to be distracted, and they're building a bubble around them. Yeah, they have really entire worlds that they inhabit. So I tried to go to those places of those women that I know, of the Mhlongo women that I know, who are my aunts and who are the ones who said, oh my goodness, our love relationships are so difficult because of the curse of Nandi. They are larger than life, yes, but they're also soft and can be very, very tender, and they can empower you. They will live for you. They will kill for you. Those women are amazing women. They're incredible women. They're incredible. And yeah, I think I was really biased and one-sided in terms of the characters that I write. And that is who they are, and that is who I write about.
This has been a really wonderful conversation. I wanted to know, now that Daughters of Nandi has been out in the world for a bit, what is your hope for the book, but also for these three women and how they impact people, and even maybe to a small extent the men?
Yes. Oh, gosh. My hope is that it gets read. That is my hope. That people read the book. And I hope that one person who said something very beautiful was they really wish they could read it for the first time again. Oh gosh, now my failing memory, I can't now remember. But somebody said that they really wish that they could read the Daughters of Nandi again for the very first time. And that is incredible. But more than just wishing or hoping for the Daughters of Nandi, I'm just grateful for the gift that is the Daughters of Nandi, for the gift of the story. And I now need to write Tania's Secret and Mgabai the Answer, which are the next two. And please don't ask me about those two books.
All that we'll be back. We'll be back here to talk about them. That's all we know.
I'll be in touch.
I'll
be in touch, but there is absolutely nothing I can say about now. But Cheeky Natives, I will be in touch. And my goodness, this has been an incredible talk. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I'm actually getting goosebumps as we are ending this talk. But thank you very much. It's been incredible. It's been incredible. And I have been waiting, Cheeky Natives. Thank you.
I want to ask an unfair question. At the end of Our Perfect Wedding, they ask you, was this your perfect wedding? And so I'm thinking maybe we start with you and asking, is this the best conversation you've had about Daughters of Nandi?
I'm going to be extremely bold like Queen Nandi and say this is absolutely the best interview I have had on the Daughters of Nandi with the Cheeky Natives.
There you go, Cheeky Natives.
On that note, thank you so much, Dr. Mazibuko Msimang. I think I've almost even forgiven you for the men in this book, just off the basis of this conversation.
All of them. Zenzo is wonderful. Zenzo is wonderful.
Yes. I did say one of three.
And Khosi is wonderful. And Mahamba
I think so. Khosi Moagi is wonderful. I really love
Khosi Moagi is wonderful.
For his time and place. He was a patriarch.
No, Khosi Moagi is wonderful. The other two, no, it's fine. But in the spirit of peace, thank you so much for really what has been such a wonderful conversation. I am so excited to see what comes out of this series of books, but also for the kind of imagining around how we speak about women in historical fiction and how we think about women's role in even on the fringes of history and how we bring them back from those fringes. So thank you so much. We really look forward to having many more conversations with you, and all the best with the next two books. No pressure, but you know where to find the Cheeky Natives.
Thank you.
Absolutely love the Cheeky Natives. Love.
Thank you,
next time.
everybody. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Cheeky Natives. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and rate the podcast on all your streaming platforms.